Car crash cases, defective products, dangerous drugs, injuries, and abuse. Across the state of Alabama, the attorneys, proudly sponsored by the law firm of Hollis, Wright, are here to serve you. Your tough legal questions answered by our experts. The attorneys with Josh Wright from the law firm of Hollis, Wright, and host David Lamb.
Good evening and welcome into the attorneys. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Our topic of conversation going to cover workplace injuries. This is just a fascinating conversation, some changes in laws, some updates and things you need to know about. So a really interesting conversation coming your way in the next half hour. Before we get to our panel of experts, a couple of reminders. Attorneys from Hollis, Wright, standing by live all throughout the program tonight. Would love to connect with you so that free legal advice is available to you. It is off air and confidential. And here are the numbers to know. If you would like to text, the text number is 205-670-1949, or you can call 205-324-3600 or 844-529-8255. So plenty of ways for you to join our conversation tonight. Leading our conversation, he's the managing partner of Hollis Wright, Josh Wright. Josh, good to see you.
Good to see you too. How you doing?
I'm doing good.
Did you have a good week?
I did, in fact. How about you?
It was good, real good. You know, it's interesting when you give those numbers out. Of course, they can call 844-LAW-TALK too. When you give those numbers out, you know, I don't think people really realize that there are live lawyers standing by tonight to answer calls, texts, emails. If you have a legal issue associated with this topic, workplace injuries, we're here to help. If you have an issue related to an automobile accident, we're here to help. If you have a domestic issue, if you have a divorce issue, a custody issue, we can maybe not handle that directly tonight, but we can get you to the right person so that we can get you on the right track regardless of what your legal issue is. So we do try and provide a full service practice to be able to either answer questions related to legal topics that someone may be experiencing in their life. If we can't help you, we're going to get you to somebody without question. So tonight, we're going to talk about workplace injuries, and we're going to be talking about the Alabama Workers' Compensation Statute. We have Brian Spellen with us here today, who's got his own law firm that is an expert in this area. And Dave, this is a good example of an area of the law where our firm may not be an expert in it. We do have a lawyer that handles a lot of these cases, but a lot of times we'll bring somebody else like Brian on to be able to talk about it, because there are so many things that are always changing in the law and different spins and ways on how to be successful in a workers' compensation case. So we like to bring a lot of different representatives on. So Brian, first of all, welcome aboard, and thank you for agreeing to come on the show.
Josh, thank you, David. Thank you guys for bringing me on.
All right, so this is a true specialty. If you don't understand the workers' compensation statute, dipping your toe in it and trying to handle a case here or there is a mistake, I know. How did you get in this area of the law? And tell us a little bit about your practice and kind of what you focus on.
Initially, I started out working on the other side of the law. So I represented companies a little bit over maybe a year and a half when I first started out. And I felt like it was the workers needed better representation. And so I started Spellen Law back in, I want to say it was 2010, 2011. And from that point, we've been representing a lot of people who've been injured on the job, fighting for their rights. It's an uphill battle, but it's one that we take and do every day.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about the comp statute. People, I think, get confused thinking, well, if you caused your own accident, you're prevented from recovering. They don't have the right to file a workers' compensation case. The system doesn't really work that way, though, does it?
It doesn't. Workers' comp is what we call a faultless-based recovery system. So as long as you were on the job in the course of employment during the time of your injury, you're going to be able to recover some form of benefits.
Talk a little bit about, you say, in the course of your employment. That's kind of a complicated legal issue. You've actually got to be working on the job at the time. For example, if you're driving home, you may not be covered under the comp statute, but if you're on the job, you may. So talk just a little bit about that.
So I guess the term, like you said, arising out of the course of employment, it deals with, a primary example would be if you sustain an immediate injury. So that injury would be considered out of the course of employment as long as your employer was receiving some benefit at the time of your injury. Now, it could be anything from what we call a cumulative or a repetitive injury. So if you're doing, let's say you work on an assembly line at work and you're constantly taking something off the assembly line. Well, that motion can cause problems in a rotator cuff, or if you're lifting, it can cause problems in your knees or your hips. And so that repetitive motion can also be what we call compensable under the Workers' Compensation Act as well.
Now, talk also a little bit about reporting requirements, because if you don't report things after an injury, I mean, for example, you're talking about a repetitive injury, someone may not recognize immediately, hey, I need to report this because this injury is associated with a repetitive thing I'm doing at work. If you don't report, though, in a certain amount of time, sometimes you can waive that claim, can't you?
Yes, employers a lot of times like to make you think that that window is shorter than it actually is. Typically, you'll have about a week to make sure your employer is aware that you sustained some form of injury. But you can have up until 90 days to make sure your employer knows that, hey, I believe that this is a workers' comp injury. I was injured on the job.
You know, the important thing is to get a lawyer involved in these cases early, because the lawyer can lead, guide, and direct you through the process. And as Brian would tell us, one of the interesting things about comp is the legal fees are statutorily capped at 15%, where the lawyer is only allowed to receive a certain amount. You can't receive less, you're not going to receive more. That's just the way the statute itself works.
A question we've got here before we head to break: if I've been injured on the job, what sort of benefits might I be entitled to?
If you're injured on the job, there's typically three main benefits that you're going to get. You get medical, you can get vocational retraining. So for example, medical benefits are going to be any sort of treatment that you receive. You'd be entitled to receive reimbursement for travel and so forth. You also would have vocational benefits. Vocational benefits would include any sort of retraining. So let's say you were injured and you were unable to return to that job. Okay, and then you also receive what's called indemnity payments. So while you're unable to return to work, you'd be able to receive payments while you're off from work. Okay. So those are typically your three main forms of benefits that you're going to be able to receive.
When we come back, I want to unwrap those a little bit, because there are some subparts to those that I think a person sitting on the couch that may have been involved in a workplace injury needs to understand. And we'll kind of unwrap those a little bit more too, and give Brian a little more time to walk through some of that stuff.
Fantastic. We're off to a great start. Appreciate you being along for the ride tonight. Hey, if you are a social media type of person, don't forget Hollis Wright all over social media: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Just search Hollis Wright. You'll find him there. Stay tuned. We're coming right back.
I'm Josh Wright with the law firm of Hollis Wright, a personal injury law firm. Thank you for watching The Attorneys. Now, we hope you, a friend, or a loved one never needs legal counsel for a case. But if you do, the goal of the show is simple: provide answers and legal counsel when you need it the most. Your call to the show is free, so if you have questions specific to the show or related to other accident or injury-related topics, you can call, email, or text us. Or you can also follow us on Facebook or Twitter, or simply contact us by going to hollis-wright.com and click on the Contact Us link. We know your time is valuable, so thank you for spending it with us watching The Attorneys. It's common for a potential client to ask, there are many great firms out there. What separates Hollis Wright from other law firms? My response is generally to talk about the strengths of our law firm in handling cases throughout Alabama and the United States. That we've recovered through verdicts and settlements, hundreds of millions of dollars for our clients. That we have financial resources to hire any required expert and to take their case all the way to trial, even if it costs us hundreds of thousands of dollars to do so. That we settle cases for top dollar before trial is needed, because the insurance companies and defendants know we have the ability to take a case all the way to trial. That we handle cases only on a contingency fee, which means we never ask the client to pay any costs of litigation whatsoever, and only recover those costs in a fee if we win for the client. That we have a staff of more than 20 employees that help us litigate cases from start to finish. That we've had a television show on NBC 13 for 6 years, that answers thousands of questions to citizens for free each year. But what I've learned in the last 20 years as a trial lawyer is that clients want more and deserve more than all those things. Those things are expected of each law firm they consider. So with that wisdom, what I tell clients now is simply this. We are a family-oriented practice at Hollis Wright, just like their own family. That we are a team-oriented group that engages in team-building exercises and team-building events because it helps our clients win cases. That we are dads and moms and brothers and sisters. That we are former Alabama trial lawyer presidents. That we return every single telephone call from every single client. That our bedside manner is second to none. So what really separates our firm from others? We're balanced and well-rounded, and as such, we relate to people not just as lawyers, but as compassionate human beings. Human beings that know what it's like to face a day in court. We are advocates, we are compassionate, we are tireless. We are, simply put, Hollis Wright.
Welcome back into the Attorneys. Appreciate you joining us tonight. Hey, a quick reminder before we jump back into tonight's conversation. Would love to have you join in the conversation. Attorneys standing by live from Hollis Wright. Take advantage of the opportunity. The contact information there on your screen. If you want to text 205-670-1949 or 844-529-8255, 844-LAW-TALK. Josh?
That makes it easy.
It does.
Law Talk. I like that. All right, so Brian, when we left and went out to break, I wanted to unwrap a little bit about how you're compensated if you're off of work. Can you describe basically kind of the categories that someone's entitled to if they're off of work, what kind of damage they can get?
Sure. So you're going to break that down into whether you're temporarily or totally, temporarily or permanently unable to return to work. So if you're temporarily unable to return to work, you're looking at mainly two forms of compensation you'll receive. The first is going to be temporary total disability, which is our most common form of compensation that you're going to see. And that means that you were injured on the job and you're totally unable to return to work during the course of your rehabilitation. During that time, you're going to receive 2/3 of whatever you normally received at your pay at work. Now, the other one, which is less common that we see for temporary payments, is going to be temporary partial. In this situation, you've been returned to work, but you're making less than you were when you were at work because they put you in another position or something like that. In that situation, the workers' comp insurance company would pay you part of your salary that you received from your previous position. Now you have the two permanent portions that come in too. So if, let's say you're done with your treatment, the doctor has released you, and the doctor says, okay, because of your injury, you're unable to return to work at all. So if that's the case, then you're going to be entitled to you're going to be entitled to permanent compensation for your injury. Now if you're just partially injured but permanently partially injured, you're also going to be entitled to compensation, but it wouldn't be as much, just going to be a portion of that overall sum.
Yeah, this is a shining example of why you've got to have a lawyer with you to figure out where you classify. If you try and run this alone, you're making a major mistake. You want to make sure that you've got somebody to help you through the process. Now, Brian, one of the things I do want to ask is this. I know we get a lot of calls like this, and that is, hey, I've been injured at work. I'm afraid if I file a comp case or I initiate a comp case, even if it's not filed, but I initiate to try and resolve, they're going to somehow discriminate against me. They're going to terminate me. There are some laws that protect the worker, are there not, that can protect them from that type of discrimination?
There are. The term under the law is called retaliatory discharge. And now it won't stop an employer from firing you, unfortunately, but it does protect you in the case that they do. So if you've been injured on the job, you report your claim, and your employer decides to terminate you because of that, you're entitled to seek compensation from them. Part of your compensation is going to be part of your lost wages that you lost as a result of them terminating you. And then you're also going to be entitled to punitive damages against the employer as well for taking that action. It is very important, I would say, to seek a lawyer in those situations, because if you don't, let's say you're fired and you apply for unemployment. If you apply for unemployment and your unemployment is not granted for some reason or another, and it's not properly appealed, it can serve as a complete bar to you receiving those benefits under the retaliatory discharge.
David, there's also a whole different area of the law that we deal with at our firm a lot that is an interplay into what Brian does, and that is that there are circumstances where someone's injured on the job, but they were injured in that circumstance, and there's a third party that has responsibility that is not insulated by the workers' comp statute. As Brian talked about earlier, workers' comp is a no-fault system, but it also insulates the employer from being sued for their negligence and their wantonness and their willfulness. However, there are claims that you can still assert under the workers' comp statute against co-employees who may have engaged in wanton or willful conduct. And then there are oftentimes third parties. And a good example would be a circumstance where there's a third-party vendor or maybe a third-party contractor that's involved on a job site that caused an accident where the employer is insulated, but that third party may have responsibility. So sometimes it's good to get to a guy like Brian to be able to evaluate and assess what is the full ability of my claim. Do I have the ability just to file a comp case, or is there a third-party case too that may be outside of workers' comp?
A question we've got here, the injury I sustained at work was my fault, and I have been told that I am not eligible for workers' compensation. Is this true?
Now, David, I have to tell you that is absolutely not true.
Okay.
Again, workers' comp is a faultless-based recovery system. So regardless of whether you're at fault or your company, there's a little bit of leeway in here, but if your company was negligent, it plays no part in your ability to recover. So all you need to do is make sure that you are at work performing your job, performing some sort of benefit to your employer at the time. It could even be a company softball game and you sustained an injury because your employer is receiving some form of benefit from it. It could be deemed as what we call a compensable injury.
You know, it seems to me that although comp has changed over the years, there are a lot of things that have not changed, like certain caps. Have you seen that? I mean, is it since your practice has started, has there been a lot of change in the workers' comp statute?
Josh, you're going to get me out my hot seat here. Unfortunately, our workers' compensation laws have been in place since the late 80s, early 90s. We have not seen a lot of change. Both sides of the bar, meaning attorneys who represent employers as well as attorneys who represent workers, agree that our compensation system is unfair. You mentioned the cap. There is a $220 cap, which greatly, and that's based on the average weekly wage, which caps the benefits that you can receive for certain types of injuries under the law. Now, when's the last time you know that someone earned $220 a week? Yeah. Currently, our state is roughly about $840 a week, and that's an average across our entire state. But we've been capped at $220, which is, at the time it was instituted, I think it was above the poverty line. Now it's extremely below the poverty line. I think that comes out to roughly $1,100 a month. And I don't know any families that can survive on that.
So here's what I want to do, because I started a topic as we're getting ready to go to commercial break, but I want to hit that more because I think Brian's got some opinions about some things maybe that we can adjust and change, and or trends and areas that we're going in the workers' comp world that hopefully we can help workers even more than we do currently. That's a big topic. We could do an entire show on that right there. So when we get back, let's talk a little bit more about that and we'll work our way through it.
All right, we're stepping aside. Final break of the evening. Stay tuned. We've got more of the attorneys coming right up.
I'm attorney Tyler Vale with the law firm of Hollis, Wright. Many people ask the same question: why should I hire a lawyer? While there may be some legal situations that do not require you to hire a lawyer, the clear majority of legal problems would certainly benefit from having competent counsel involved. To begin with, the law is complicated. Even experienced lawyers typically do not represent themselves in court. A solid case with clear liability can quickly unravel without the help of a trained attorney. Lawyers understand the rules of evidence and know how to properly lay a foundation to get critical evidence and testimony admitted into court. Lawyers are trained to recognize legal problems early on in a case and can help avoid pitfalls that unrepresented individuals may fall into. Lawyers can also increase the value of a case by getting experts involved to help prove additional damages that an unrepresented person may not realize they are entitled to. An experienced lawyer has probably worked on cases like yours and can give insight to negotiating a fair settlement based on recent jury verdicts and settlements that unrepresented individuals may not have access to. Another important reason to hire an attorney is because the person or business you sue will likely have legal representation themselves. Non-attorneys are generally at a disadvantage when squaring off against opposing counsel or doing business with another party that has legal counsel. The law is complicated, and an attorney who is representing your adversary may try to take advantage of it. Our law firm offers free case consultations that allow you to meet with us for free during a face-to-face meeting, where we can discuss the type of case you have, the potential value of your case, and your likelihood of success. This initial meeting can help you decide whether you need to hire a lawyer. Please remember, your call, email, or text to the attorneys is free. All of us at Hollis Wright want to help answer your questions on real issues you face. Remember, a competent lawyer will respond to every question you send in. That's our pledge and promise to you. Thanks for watching The Attorneys on WVTM 13.
Welcome back into The Attorneys. The final segment is upon us. A few minutes remaining. If you want to take advantage of that opportunity to speak with some attorneys standing by live, you got a few minutes to do so. Josh?
All right, so I kind of cut you off as we were going into the last commercial break because I know the topic you were unwrapping was a big one. Let's talk just a little bit about where does Alabama compare to other states? Is our system where it stands now fair to the worker? Do we have work we can do to make it fair? Kind of unwrap that just a little bit because I know that's a big topic among workers' compensation lawyers.
Our system is extremely unfair. And I think as an attorney who represents injured workers, we're left to just struggle with the bad law that we have, if I can say that. As compared with other states, our system is probably one of the worst in the country for compensation for workers. In 2015, and I want to make sure I actually quote this correct, NPR, National Public Radio, did an article called "Insult to Injury, America's Vanishing Worker Protections." In that article, they highlighted two workers. They lived about 75 miles apart. One lived in Georgia, one lived in Alabama. Now, both workers lost most of their arm in a machinery accident. One worker received $45,000 for his injury. The other received $740,000 for his injury. Wow. That's just one example of how grossly unfair our current system is.
What can be done from and I understand this is probably a legislative issue. What can be done, like where do you see the biggest changes and strides that can be made to help the worker? Is it adjusting the schedule? Is it increasing the caps? What's the option, if you will?
The most immediate impact that I think that we'll feel as attorneys who represent injured workers and the injured workers themselves would be to adjust the cap. The cap, again, like I was saying, $220 a week is well below the poverty level. At this point, like I said, I think the average weekly wage for the state is around $840. So if we could somehow peg it off of that number, that would be great.
Yeah. And then what about the schedule? Do you think there's work to be done on increasing the value of claims for permanent injuries in the schedule itself?
Definitely, and that's something that could be revisited. We had a special counsel assigned to actually go through the law and try to, like you say, unpack and look at some things that were unfair. And they actually submitted some proposed changes to the legislation. Now, this actually got shot down by the Alabama self-insured funds, claiming that they were unjustly or improperly represented. And that's something that we really, really need the help of the general public to reach out and contact your local senators and your local representatives to try to lobby and get some things changed down there.
Yeah, there's some powerful lobbies on the opposite side of the worker that are impacting some of this legislation and need for change. One of the things Brian talked about is, you know, this cap that he talks about hasn't been adjusted for inflation or anything else for many, many, many years. And so it's just one example of many where we can make some strides in the right direction to help the workers that have been injured.
Before we get a final thought, can we get to one final question here about the question about am I required to visit the company's doctor quickly? Must that happen?
Yes, unfortunately, when you're injured on the job, your employer has the right to control your medical treatment. So once you're injured, again, notify your employer and they'll direct you to either an on-site doctor at some of the larger plants, or sometimes they'll have somewhere they'll send you for your initial evaluation.
If you want an additional doctor or doctors to evaluate your circumstance, do you have the ability to request additional doctors?
You do. And again, I would probably caution someone to seek legal counsel, or at least meet with them, you know, briefly, if not taking on legal counsel. But yes, you can get another doctor once you've been injured and you don't like your treatment.
All right, less than just over a minute remaining. I want to give you a final opportunity for a final thought. Brian, if you would, you go first, please.
Okay. Again, Alabama's workers' compensation law is extremely unfair. It's one of the, beyond that, one benefit that's still left to the employee, it's 15%. I tell people all the time, it's the cheapest you'll probably ever pay an attorney to represent you. So it's worth it to go in and seek that legal counsel, especially if you sustained some sort of heavy injury that could affect you for the rest of your life.
You know, and what I would say, David, is this. If you're injured on the job, especially if you end up with a permanent injury, you want to have an attorney get involved quickly, because you may find not only do you have a workers' compensation case, but you've got a claim associated with a third party or a co-employee that caused the accident that is outside the workers' comp side, where you could be compensated even more than the workers' comp system. So if workers' comp is unfair, you may have an opportunity to get a third party case.
Great advice. Great
Good job.
show. Appreciate you guys being with us. Appreciate you being with us as well. As always, thank you so much. Hey, as we wrap things up, you can still get in touch with the firm. That information you see there on the screen. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time right here on The Attorneys.
Thanks for watching The Attorneys, sponsored by Hollis Wright.